Subaru invited us, Automotive News, to test drive the 2026 Forester Wilderness and 2026 Crosstrek Hybrid. And where better to do it than the Pacific Northwest? If you've ever driven through this part of the country, winding roads, gravel cut-throughs, remote forest trailheads, you've probably noticed something. Subarus everywhere. In fact, Oregon and Washington consistently rank among the top US states for Subaru ownership. So it only made sense that Subaru chose this region to showcase two of their latest offerings. Vehicles built for the trail, but just as ready for the daily drive. This was more than just a test loop or a static preview. It was a multi-day experience, starting in Portland, winding through back roads, crossing into Washington, and ending in a remote campground, all with the goal of seeing how these vehicles perform in real-life conditions. Whether it was dusty logging roads, tight gravel turns, or wide highway stretches, we got a genuine feel for how both the Forester and the Crosstrek are evolving. The 2026 Forester Wilderness marks the second generation of Subaru's off-road sub-brand, and it's clear Subaru is doubling down. According to Subaru car line planning manager Bill Stokes, Wilderness buyers are typically younger and more active, and that's exactly who this vehicle is for. Here's what stood out during our test drive. Thanks to its 9.2 inches of ground clearance, all-terrain tires, and a tuned suspension, the Forester Wilderness didn't flinch on loose surfaces or uneven ruts. Water-repellent seating, durable materials, and rugged cargo options make the Wilderness more than just a badge. Despite the rugged upgrades, the ride stayed smooth and quiet. It's clearly meant for the trail, but tuned for the commute. Now for the Crosstrek Hybrid, this one's personal for me. I daily drive a Crosstrek, and I've owned multiple Subarus, so I was curious if this new hybrid could win me over. It pairs a 2-liter boxer engine with 2 electric motors. Power output sits at around 148 horsepower, which isn't groundbreaking, but it felt more responsive than earlier Subaru hybrids. City driving in EV mode is where it shines. Quiet, efficient, and well-suited for commuters. The Crosstrek Hybrid also brings USB charging across the cabin, solid tech upgrades, and the same mix of physical and touch controls that Subaru balances well. No, it won't out-accelerate a RAV4 Prime, but if you're already a Crosstrek fan, this is a meaningful improvement. I was not alone on this trip. I was joined by Automotive News staff reporter Jack Walsworth, who covers automakers including everything from Volkswagen, Audi, and Scout Motors, and knows how to spot a brand's product strategy from a mile away. Here's what Jack shared when I asked him what stood out about this new chapter of Wilderness. Subaru's Wilderness sub-brand has been around for a few years now. What do you think is driving its growing success?
I think there's a couple things. The big thing is style and capability. If you look at a Wilderness model, whether it's an Outback, Forester, or Crosstrek, they definitely look different. They ride a little bit higher. They have all-terrain tires, a lot of cladding. It just looks a lot more off-road capable. Not that a regular Subaru isn't. I would say Subarus have always been good at off-roading. That's kind of one of the brand cornerstones is all-wheel drive and being able to go to a trailhead or off the beaten path. But with the Wilderness models, it definitely takes that up to a new level. And, we got to see that on this drive out in Washington State. I live in Seattle. The Wilderness models are super popular. I see quite a few of them, and Subarus are everywhere, but you see the Wilderness models everywhere. So I think a combination of style and extra capability really connects with customers. Pricing wise, it's not that much more expensive. I think for some people, they find that couple grand worth the price.
So you've covered a lot of future product pipelines. How do the Wilderness models fit into Subaru's broader strategy right now?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think when Subaru introduced the Wilderness, it was a way to kind of expand the brand. The portfolio isn't that big. Subaru is relatively a small automaker, but adding the Wilderness models kind of without making new models kind of expanded the portfolio. And we've seen other automakers follow similar paths. When we were at this Wilderness drive, Subaru showed us their list of competitors for the Forester Wilderness, and it is pretty big because a lot of automakers have done a similar thing. So I think it's a trend we're seeing where automakers notice that consumers like these outdoorsy, off-roady packages. It's an easier way to freshen a model and make it different than the standard one. And Subaru's got a new Outback coming, or I should say redesigned Outback coming by the end of this year, and the Wilderness version of that model will launch in early 2026. So clearly something top of mind for Subaru going forward, and I would imagine 5, 10, 15 years down the road, the Wilderness will only get bigger within the Subaru.
Yeah. Subaru sold over 71,000 Wilderness vehicles last year. Does that surprise you?
No, I would say no. Like I said, Subarus are in certain pockets of the country already really popular. And if you offer something that's even more off-road capable to people that would probably already using their cars off-road, I think that makes sense. It's probably a way to bring in other people that maybe considering Subaru before, or they just wanted something a little bit different. So yeah, not surprised by the sales results. I think it'll probably only get stronger. Looking at where these models are positioned within the product lineups, like I said earlier, the pricing's not that much higher. If you're already buying a new car, I would imagine some people will, kind of cross shop the Wilderness model with other trim lines within the model. So I could see that number probably getting bigger in the future.
Do you think this second generation of Wilderness models goes far enough to stand out in a crowded off-road crossover market?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say, it seems likely yes, but just because, the Wilderness had already been around for a couple of years, I think people already knew of it. And, when a redesign comes out, typically that's a time for it to take the next step in terms of sales or outreach. So I could see that probably being the case here with the Forester Wilderness, and same with the Outback. We did hear from Subaru that they anticipate, some shoppers have been holding off for these new generation Wilderness models. So I would be curious to see what the numbers are a year from now. But having just spent some time with the Forester Wilderness, it seems it didn't really shake up the boat too much. It just improved things. That's the beauty of these redesigns, is the automakers can introduce something, figure out what customers don't like, tune it, and then make it better and kind of go from there.
And how does Subaru's off-road approach compare to what we're seeing from other brands like Toyota or Ford?
Yeah, I would say it's similar. I think if you watch any TV, you see commercials, or you're on social media and see an ad, there's a lot of automakers are doing outdoorsy focused, take your vehicle to escape, the work or the city, things like that. But I think what's different with Subaru is that they've had this outdoorsy ethos for such a long time that it feels very natural. It doesn't feel forced. If you see a Forester Wilderness run down your street, it doesn't oh wow, what's that? It's it's like a lifted Subaru, or it's a Subaru that's maybe a little bit more off-road ready. So it seems very natural. And not to say that it's not natural for other automakers, but I think Subaru, it's just a little bit more, it feels more, not to say more natural again, but just it feels, Subaru. It doesn't feel like they're trying to be something they're not. And again, so I think Subaru's been an all-wheel drive specialist for a long time here in the US, and now it's just, these Wilderness models are just increasing that. The Forester Wilderness handled far more than what I expected. I was honestly impressed by what Subaru had us throw at it. Some of the potholes on the off-road portion were several feet deep, and without the extra ground clearance, you'd absolutely be scraping the underside of a normal crossover. But the Forester took it all in stride, staying composed and comfortable the entire time. The Crosstrek Hybrid, on the other hand, didn't look dramatically different from the current model, and that's kind of the point. Visually, it feels familiar, even in the upgraded trim. But behind the wheel, the hybrid system delivers a noticeably smoother experience, especially at lower speeds. It's still the Crosstrek that many Subaru fans know and love, just a little more refined and quiet. Inside, both models keep things simple and functional. You've got water-resistant seats, plenty of USB-C ports, and thankfully physical buttons where they matter. And compared to previous generations, the cabin noise is noticeably reduced, making the whole drive feel more polished. Of course, there are a few things to keep in mind. Neither of these vehicles is built to be a powerhouse. That's totally fine given Subaru's goals. The hybrid still doesn't match something like a RAV4 Prime when it comes to electric range or off-the-line acceleration. And Subaru's design approach leans more towards practicality than flash, which may not appeal to everyone. But if you're already a Subaru fan, these updates feel like smart, thoughtful steps forward. Let's talk quick specs and pricing. First, the 2026 Subaru Forester Wilderness. It's powered by a 2.5-liter boxer 4-cylinder engine, making 180 horsepower. It comes standard with all-wheel drive, Subaru's X-Mode traction system, and 9.2 inches of ground clearance. Pricing starts at $39,835, including destination, while the base Forester starts lower at $31,445. Now for the 2026 Subaru Crosstrek Hybrid. It combines a 2-liter boxer engine with 2 electric motors for a total of 148 horsepower. All-wheel drive is standard, and it includes a short-range EV-only mode for low-speed driving. MSRP sticker price is $32,675, also including destination. If you've driven a Subaru before, these new models won't feel foreign. They'll feel like an evolution. And if you've never owned one, this might feel like the version that finally clicks. For more from the event and everything coming down the road, visit autonews.com.